Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Redman and welcome to Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we discuss everything to do with theology books, books that might be on a reading list for a seminary course, for a bachelor's or master's degree in biblical studies or theology, or simply books that have spiked your interest, that have caught your eye, or maybe you've even seen them in your own pastor's library. So I'm commenting on books that are in my library, and I can't really comment on others. But if you like what we have to say today, please leave us a thumbs up on YouTube. That makes so much difference to the algorithm. Thank you, algorithm. And it also helps us promote the channel. Thank you so much for supporting us. It means a great deal to me personally, and thank you very much. If you want to leave a comment below, please do so, because I will try to get back to you within a week or two. I do make some time in my schedule to do that. And I do like some of the conversations that I have with some of you, which is so helpful. So today I want us to talk about study Bibles, but these are very particular study Bibles. I want us to talk about Jewish ones. Now, I'm a Christian pastor. I do believe that the Bible is true and it says salvation is of the Jews. And I believe that studying our Old Testament is just a vital part of our Bible. And so when I've seen that there's a number of Jewish Bibles, or they're called, or study Bibles, I thought maybe I ought to just sort of try and clear in my own mind what the difference between them was. And I thought it might also help us with another video. So that's where I'm coming from today. So I'm wanting to talk about 3 study Bibles in particular, but along the way, I'm going to talk about a couple of other items that might have some general interest. Now, this is the Jewish Annotated New Testament. So this is not one of the 3 study Bibles. This is the New Revised Standard Version, which was published in 2017 in this second edition of the fully revised and expanded Jewish Annotated New Testament. I think I bought this because Amy Jill Levine, who is Professor of New Testament and Jewish Studies, was chief editor of this. And I've been following some of her work. And this is actually quite helpful, because what it does is, in its 824 pages, it gives us the New Testament only, but with annotation by Jewish authors, Jewish theologians. It's bolstered by 54 essays, which if you've only got 30 in yours, it's because you've got the first edition. The second edition has all the original 30 essays refreshed, and it has 24 totally different essays added to the list. And basically, this is aimed at 2 people. It's aimed at the Christian, who is going to be given a window on first century Judaism, and it's aimed at the Jew, who will then be introduced to the New Testament with no religious agenda, and with guidance from Jewish thinkers, Jewish theologians. In addition, it will explain to the Jew Christian practices like, for example, the Eucharist. So this is a very clear layout, very clear design. What we have in here is clearly a bridge between Jew and Christian, and it's trying to get the Jew to engage with the New Testament, and it's trying to open the eyes of the Christian to the reality of first century Judaism, both of which I think are of great value. Now, what I would say to you about this is, I think its mission is an excellent mission. The idea of bridging the gap, I'm all for that. I'm not so impressed with the Christian readings of the Jewish annotation. I sort of thought, I didn't think I felt that I'd learnt a lot, if I'm honest with you. But I think this has great value in what it has set out to do, and I think it's done a good job. For me, it's the 54 essays that are worth it for this. This is a book of good essays. None of them are terribly long. There might be 3, 4, 5 pages, but they are helpful because you get Jewish thought entering into it. So that's an interesting volume. Now, before we get on to these study Bibles, I have this 3-volume Hebrew Bible by Robert Alter. Now, I have to say to you, this has had phenomenal support by Christian theologians. Robert Alter is a Christian theologian, and his original translation of the Old Testament comes with substantive notes. So I don't know if you can see on this, but that much is the translation and that much is the notes. That's the translation, that's the notes. And I have to say, I just picked a page at random. That was Exodus chapter 7. This is really a lot of notes. That doesn't mean there aren't pages with fewer. For example, on Numbers 33, where you've got a lot of places listed, there's only a tiny bit of notes at the bottom of the pages. But that's because what is there to say about moving from camp to camp? Now, what I would say about Robert Alter is that, personally speaking, I have definitely gained something from reading this. I am not as impressed with the whole of the translation as I am with some other modern translations, like the New Revised Standard Version and the Christian Standard Bible and the New International Version 2011. And there are some very, very good translations. And Robert Alter, I think, is at his best when translating more difficult issues where he is having a stab at it. And I think it's in those areas where I think Robert Alter really has something to offer. The commentary notes are clearly worth a lot. And I would endorse this for the commentary notes. This is like buying a 3-volume set of commentaries on the Old Testament, all in one volume. They're good. So what I would say to you is Robert Alter, which can be expensive. I mean, I got this as a 3-volume, a brand new set in its cardboard housing, and I got it locally in the store near me that I walk past every day, which had had it in stock for too long, and they halved the price. And now that's a good deal. So there are deals to be had if you look for them, but quite seriously, this is highly thought of. Now, I thought we ought to just deal with those additional volumes before getting to the Jewish Study Bibles. Now, this is the Complete Jewish Study Bible, and it is a Hendrickson publication. It was published in 2016. It's 1,909 pages, and this has the whole CJB text, the Complete Jewish Bible text, which is a translation. It is a thing. The CJB, KJV, NIV, it's one of those things. It's a real thing. It was originally translated in 1998 and updated in 2016, ready for this. And it is described as being the only version of the Bible that is fully Jewish in style and presentation. And it's the only whole Bible that is Jewish. Now, I believe that that is true. It is into my level of research, which doesn't take us a lot further. This is New Testament and Old Testament in one volume. So, the Jewish New Testament in here is a translation from the Greek. The Old Testament is largely a paraphrase of the 1917 wording of the JPS, that's the Jewish Publication Society translation. It's got some sections offering wholly new translations from the Hebrew, but basically, I think I'm paraphrasing the translator on this, but he really couldn't be bothered at his age to produce an entirely new translation from the Hebrew. That maybe came out not as pleasant as it does in his, but seriously, it's a thing, isn't it? For a one-man effort, there's a lot of work involved. Now, just to give you some examples, this has inserts in particular colours. Each colour represents a theme, which is indicated in the front of the book. And this has all names Jewishified. So Jesus isn't Jesus in this. He's Yeshua, if I've got that anywhere near right. If not, please forgive me. The book names are sometimes Jewishified. So you've got John's Gospel is Yochanan. And of course, Genesis is Breshit, which I can think we can all understand that. Now, in all of these, you will find some useful notes, but the notes, they're not as often as I would expect in a study Bible. So, for example, I've just opened at random here, Psalm 66, 67, 68, and there are 4 sentences on the bottom of the page. 2 dealing with 67, 1 dealing with 268 as well. And I don't think that's very much. Psalm 137 has got a little bit more. But as you go through, you'll find whole sections like Job chapter 5 doesn't have any notes on one page. On the next page, it's got 4 lines. So this is not an enormous insight through the footnotes being the commentary in this. What you do have is some helpful insight in these footnotes. There's just not that many of them. So, for example, in Daniel chapter 3, it says, "Look, I see 4 men. The 4th person walking around in the blazing furnace appears to the king to have had a genuinely divine quality. Christian theologians have long held that this is the angel of the Lord appearing here as the pre-incarnate Yeshua. It is Yeshua who is able to rescue his faithful children, even from the flames of death." That's the sort of example of a footnote here in this. Moving on to the New Testament, in John chapter 1, it says this: "In the beginning was the Word." This echoes the first sentence of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It's probably roughly what you would see in most study Bibles. It says here, though, the Word is not named as such in Genesis, but is immediately seen in action. And God said, "Let there be light." God expresses himself as commanding, calling, and creating. This expressing, this speaking, this word is God. A God who does not speak, a wordless God, is no God at all. And I thought that was helpful. Definitely had a bit of insight there. Flicking over into Acts, which is the only other one I'm going to show you in this. In Acts chapter 2, there's an insert here about the festival of Pentecost. And it says about them being filled with the Holy Spirit. It says they were all filled with the Ruach HaKodesh. In the Tanakh, certain individuals had the Ruach, Holy Spirit, in or with them. Examples, Numbers 11:17, 1 Samuel 10 verse 6. Yet in Acts 2, God brings to pass what Moshe prayed for so long ago, that God would put his Spirit on all his people. Numbers 11:29. Fulfilling what Yeshua promised them. Luke 24:29, John 16:16, 20:22, and Acts 1 verse 8. So, what would I say about this? This has a Jewishness of style. It has a little bit of insight in its notes, and it certainly gives you a hand. I think this has had some acceptance among messianic groups. But if I'm honest with you, I don't think it's done a lot for me. And I can only tell you how I've found it. It is, however, the only Bible of its type that's translated from a Jewish point of view, and it is a complete Christian Bible. So I saw that advertised and I bought it. I also saw two others advertised. And I want to just sort of say these have a lot in common, but they're totally different in their standards of delivery. This one, the Jewish Study Bible, 2nd edition, features the Jewish Publication Society Tanakh translation. And this started life as the JPS translation in 1999. This was published in 2014. It's got 2,322 pages. And this has a heck of a lot more notes than any other Jewish study Bible. This is the Bible you buy for notes. It is quite remarkable. In the introduction, it talks about itself as the Hebrew Bible or the Bible, and it uses the terms interchangeably because it considers that the Old Testament is the full Bible. In other words, it doesn't consider the New Testament is part of the Bible. But it has lots and lots of really helpful notes from a Jewish perspective. And when you think this is just the Old Testament, having a Jewish perspective is rather good. It's got good maps in the back. It's got an interesting and helpful glossary. It's got numbers of tables and things like that. And it has a whole range of essays in the back, which are really helpful and insightful. Again, a little bit like the other one, the essays in this were remarkably good, and they really, really helped me. So in terms of the amount of notes on the page, don't know if you can see this, but you can tell here down the sides and across the bottom, the text is different to in the middle. In the middle is the translation. Around the sides and across the bottom are the commentary notes. And there is loads here. I mean, I've just opened a page at random. It says here, this is in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 23. A loathsome woman who gets married, a slave girl who supplants her mistress. And what it says in the notes here is that there is a natural order. The point here is that a man should not force his son to marry a woman he dislikes. The word for hated seems to mean unloved or dispreferred, and a slave girl should be kept in her place and not supplant, or more precisely, disinherit her mistress. It's an interesting insight from a Jewish background, which I think is very helpful indeed. So this obviously finishes with the Old Testament, which for this Bible is 2 Chronicles. All of our Old Testament books are in this. They're just not necessarily in the right order. So the Torah is there, the first 5 books. Then the Nevi'im, which is Joshua up to the 12 prophets, Malachi. And then the Ketuvim, which is the Megillot, and Daniel and Ezra, Nehemiah, 1st Chronicles, 2nd Chronicles. So I would say to you, this of the 3 is the most important to me. I think this is a really helpful overriding Old Testament translation and commentary, and it's not that expensive. I think I paid about £30 for it. So the third and final one of these is the JPS Tanakh, which is described on its cover as the gender-sensitive edition, but is described inside as the revised JPS, Jewish Publication Society translation. So the RJPS is what you would see it quoted as, which makes me wonder why it has to be advertised as the gender-sensitive edition. Could it be that the Jews haven't any memory of what happened to the Christians with the Today's New International Version, the TNIV? Do you remember that? TNIV was a modest update to the New International Version, and boy, did we need it. I mean, the Zondervan were hemorrhaging readers because the NIV was proving to have that sort of the version from, was it 84 or something like that, was proving to have so many issues in it that I, like many preachers, would be reading the NIV and saying, when it says this, what it actually means is. So I was having to do a sort of a translation in the middle of preaching, which was not helpful. But the TNIV became a really good translation. But before it even hit the shops, there was a statement of concern released. And people were invited to sign a letter of protest. And this literally became a huge, huge thing because it was said to have gender-sensitive language. And what people thought that meant, compared to what it actually meant, was very, very different indeed. And I would just suggest that maybe this was not a very clever thing to call it that, when actually it will be known as the RJPS, and it is the Revised Jewish Publication Society version. And why isn't it just said that on the cover? What this actually means from their point of view is that when the previous version was published, people in more like our generation, oh golly, am I saying that I am the current generation? Because I don't think I am. I mean, just look in the mirror, Stephen. But people that are more tuned to 21st century speak were struggling with some of the translations that had been given by JPS translators, and were recognising that they weren't actually very good in areas of gender. So in areas where maybe humankind would have been the best translation, mankind was offered, which in the 21st century is not what it was when I was growing up. I mean, for me, mankind is mankind. It's all of us. So despite perhaps not using the most clever wording for the title, I would suggest to you that there is nothing weird about this. It doesn't start calling God Mother or anything daft. This is a well laid out on the page translation, a very clear single column. It just has footnotes at the bottom of the page, which are not that impressive, if I'm honest. For a study Bible, this, to my mind, gives you very little to study. I mean, I've just opened here randomly at Psalm 51 and 52. Psalm 51 has got one comment on the bottom of verse 8. The meaning is uncertain. And on chapter 52, it has got 4 comments, which very, very small, minor things, and you could probably get away without knowing them. The truth is that there are whole pages with nothing on. It's very, very different reality to this Jewish Study Bible, 2nd edition. The JPS Tanakh might possibly be a better translation because it doesn't use masculine words where they weren't actually inferred by the Hebrew. And, you know, it's one thing to say, well, I've always said that word in that way. Well, maybe you have. But if it wasn't that way in the original text, why shouldn't we be prepared to change it? So in that sense, this is a slightly better translation. But in terms of a study Bible, this blows it away. So where are we on this? If you're wanting a good study Bible, the complete Jewish study Bible, the one I showed you, the blue cover, is a little bit Jewish in style. Does it really offer very, very much? Well, for me, I don't feel it does. I think there are better study Bibles for Christians. If you don't see that being something that ticks your box and you're looking for something that's slightly more Messianic Jew steered towards, then it's got some value. If you're wanting a good study Bible on the Old Testament, this is sheer good value. It is absolutely excellent. It really offers something. I think it's absolutely a brilliant study Bible. Old Testament though, and it's second edition Jewish study Bible. If you are wanting that higher quality translation of the Old Testament, this has something to offer. And if you are wanting to look at something which is highly thought of theologically, Robert Alter's version is a much better commentary than the gender-sensitive version. So I hope I've just steered you through that a little bit, because when I was ordering these, I found it very difficult to know which one I was going to get from which supplier, because the titles were very similar and I had to make sure I was getting the ISBN number that I wanted. And even then, I wasn't quite sure until they all arrived through the door, and on the first attempt I got the 3 I'd wanted, because it is confusing. I don't think that by any means does a Christian theologian need to have a Jewish study Bible, but that second edition Jewish study Bible is very, very, very good, and it has something definitely to offer in your overall studies, and I can't really knock that at all. The other two, I'm not really sure. Robert Alter's definitely got something to offer. So in all of these, don't just rush out and buy one because you think, oh, I'll get that second edition one. You need to make sure that you're getting what it says on the cover. If you've got a local Christian bookshop to buy it from, or a thrift store that someone's traded one in, then those are good places because it's in front of you. But please make sure you get the Jewish Study Bible. Mine's published by Oxford, and I would imagine it probably will be worldwide, but it's a good product. The Robert Alter ones, well, Robert Alter is a little bit niche, but he is highly regarded and his thoughts are very helpful. So that's it for today. I hope you've liked it. If you have, remember the thumbs up. Remember to subscribe and click on the bell if you haven't done already. And do please comment below. It's lovely to hear from you. If you've got any further questions or any suggestions for future episodes, please leave them below. And until next time, all I have to say to you is, bye!